Welcome to another episode of Life and Whiskey. As always, I'm Jordan, and today we're going to look at Yellowstone. What is it? Yellowstone Bourbon Whiskey. It says since 1872, 93%, 46.5 ABV, distilled in Lebanon, Kentucky. Okay, so I know I don't normally do background information stuff. I got just a smidge, and this is Yellowstone Select. I actually haven't seen too many others. So Limestone Branch Distillery Company. They also, I don't know if Luxco partnered with them, bought them out, kind of the top tier, whatever. But that's who's partnered or has part ownership with the Limestone. It's very rare that you see big production, small craft distilleries out there that haven't been bought. I mean, even Wyoming Whiskey has a partnership with, let me just look real quick here, the Edgington Group. So, hey, you're in the business to make money, right? So why not pay, or why not take the money when somebody offers to pay? So the brand's been around since 1872 of Yellowstone, and it was named in honor, or so the story on the back of the label says, in honor of Yellowstone National Park being created, I think, in the same year. I think in 1872. I might have my facts wrong on some of that, so I don't really know. What's more important is the whiskey and what's in the bottle and what we think about that. Let alone, everybody has a backstory. Everybody has, this was great grandpappy's recipe handed down. Most of it's completely bullshit and is marketing. And really, if you're into that sort of thing, you can look it up. I'm really into quality of the whiskey, the nose, the flavor, all that stuff. So, anyways, I did find that this Yellowstone brand has been around since 1872, but I don't even remember all the stories. But some brands come and then the rights to that brand name get bought by another company, and then they start distilling. Might be a completely different flavor profile, might be a completely different whiskey, but they have the right to the brand name. So a bunch of interesting history on stuff like that. I do have a book upstairs. I don't remember it off the top of my head. I think it was more of an art book where it was looking at the different labels over the years. But it is an interesting book, kind of going back on brand names and when they started and when they didn't. But okay, long story, even longer. There you go. Luxco has a hand in this as far as either ownership or partnership or whatever. 93 proof, 46.5% ABV. Can pick this up here locally for $36.59. Not extremely expensive. Let's see what we get. On the nose, classic bourbon. I mean, I don't know how many times you can say that, but like I said, 50% of my bar or more is just bourbons right now. I got 150 bottles, let's say. And you can see we're going to be doing bourbons here for the next couple of reviews. And in fact, I got a whole box of bourbons down there. And it's not often, but we got some good ones coming up. That flavors and nosing notes drift outside of a fairly tight margin, which define it as bourbon, I guess. So I get cherry. I was just seeing if I could get something else out of it. That cherry's kind of dominating, kind of like a nice Jim Beam cherry, light fruit cherry. You might claim that there was some apple in there in the background, or apple blossom. When I get a nice light fruit cherry, it's always on the cusp of cherry, ripe apple, and like this floral note. And I could go with any of those three, and they're pretty similar in nose, but cherry, touch of oak, and then just a sweetness coming through, like a hard candy sweetness. Nothing out of the ordinary. Flavor profile, a little bit dry on the palate to start. You get a little bit of sweetness, candy sweetness up front. It pushes into a cherry, has some oak and tannin towards the finish. Fairly simple profile. Very short. Like I said, dry on the palate, kind of dries out your tongue. Anytime that I find that a whiskey of any variety has a dry mouthfeel, the flavor profile seems to be pretty short. Typically, you would think that, the more oily and clingy it is, the longer the profile is going to be. So you can figure that, it doesn't have a very oily, clingy mouthfeel. So therefore, it's not going to have a very long finish. Going back to the glass, nothing really changed there. Low brown sugar up front that time. Just a touch of vanilla in there. Fruit cherry, oak, and oak tannin to finish it out. Underlain with just a light sweetness. Whole flavor profile kind of comes and goes in about 5 seconds, more or less. You get a little bit of heat at the end from the ethanol. 93 proof's not too bad. So there's a couple of punches in there. Like the notes, it tastes just a touch young. I don't know how old this is. Is there an age statement on here? I should have looked at that because Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, so at least 2 years, and aged in Kentucky, blah blah blah. Tongue. See, to the nose is leather with hints of citrus and oak. I'll give you a citrus, maybe. I don't know about any of those others. On the tongue, it's a spicy rye with soft cherries fading to smoked caramel. I don't get the smoked caramel, but I'll give you the cherries. The rye spice, I'd say sure. A memorable finish, rich with brown sugar and Kentucky tradition. You know, I don't know if I'd give it all of that. I don't really know the age on that. I don't see an age statement on here, so let's assume that it's at least 4 years old. To me, it tastes a little bit young because there's a couple of spiky notes in there, and the flavor profile doesn't just meld from one into the next. That's not necessarily true. That could be partially due to the proof. They said a nice rye spice, so if this is a high rye mash bill, again, didn't look any of that up, but if it is, that might bring that spice forward, and that also might bring some of the dryness on the palate. So there you go. It's a very nice whiskey. Mind you, today this is right at noon. I have not eaten breakfast or anything this morning other than my coffee. So I'm coming off things fairly uninfluenced as far as that goes. And it's good. It's a good sipping bourbon, and at 30, what did I say, 36, 36.59. I'm not going to complain, especially for the proof. That time the nose was much sweeter than the nose, like almost a caramel in the nose. And on the palate that time, I got maybe, power of suggestion, but I got a rye grain note and spice mixed together. So a little bit of grain dust mixed in there and a little bit of caramel. Yeah, it's a good whiskey. It's a very nice whiskey. There's no faults with it. It might get lost in the sea of bourbons out there. There's nothing that stands out about it. Especially at that price point, you can get a couple of things in that $30 to $40 range that are unique and interesting. This is not that, but it is good. So definitely don't fear going out and buying a bottle, especially if you can find it on sale or something like that. By all means, pick it up if you're a bourbon fan. It's a nice bourbon. But drop in the comments down below what you can find a bottle for in your area. I definitely forgot to say that in some of my other videos previously. So if you watch any of those videos, go ahead and do that as well. Let me know what your experience is with this as well. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. And thanks for subscribing to the channel if you have done that already. I appreciate it. I see my numbers keep growing by the day, which is awesome. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel and smashing that like button if you like this content. And that's really all I got to say on this one. I'm going to let that go for now because I've said more than enough on this. But yeah, thanks for watching. You guys have yourselves a great day, and we'll catch you in the next video.